All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to pass it over to Alejandro from ACORN to start us off for this evening.
Hi everyone. My name is Alejandro, and sorry I cannot be on the screen right now. I was on the already connected through Zoom, but something happened to my internet service. It collapsed, but I'm a little bit over the phone right now. So I just want to welcome everyone, and I want to say thank you for joining us tonight. We have a lot of people with us right now on Zoom, and that's really exciting. And we are here to discuss inclusionary zoning, and for everyone here to help us to get more organized, to fight for people over profit. We know that the city is being, affected by greedy developers who have way too much power, and we are here to fight back. In the next 2 months, the city will be finalizing its inclusionary zoning policy, and we are here to present an understanding of what that policy is, develop our collective demands, and get organized to keep building for the movement for a bold inclusionary zoning policy and for a city that regular people can afford. So I'll go over to Zoom overview. We are on Zoom, most of us, and hopefully you are all familiar, but if not, I will go over some few key functions. Everyone has been muted. We will have a question and answer session later, but with so many people that we are right now in this town hall meeting, we need to keep you muted to cut back on background noise. We are also being live streamed this on Facebook, and it will be recorded there. And if you are uncomfortable with showing your face, you can turn your camera off. You can also turn your camera off if your internet is slow. In the participant tab, you can raise and lower your hand to ask a question, and also rename yourself. Please use the chat function to ask questions or get feedback. The organizers will share links as well in the chat. So I'll go over to the land acknowledgement. This land about which I'm speaking today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Métis, the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation, and continues to be the home to many indigenous people. This land, about which I'm speaking today, was stolen from these communities who, for countless generations, have passed on the lessons that it ought to be cared for and stewarded, but all who take part in using it, in partition and owned by no one. It was stolen by white supremacists who parceled it up and divided it up under the pretense that the right to determine the land should be granted to the highest bidder. The struggle to decolonize Toronto is intrinsically bound up with our struggle to wrestle with the control of land and the development process from those colonists who continue to build land use simply as a means to inflating their revenues and to take more and more control of land use into the hands of the communities making it home. Today's objectives and why we are here is we are here tonight because we want to be, and I think, that's, I don't need to say that much, but I think we all want to be passionate, we want to be, strong, and we're going to be, contributing and sharing our ideas how to build this city for the future. We also here because we had to be here. We need to fight for our city, to fight for housing. We are in a housing crisis and a COVID-19 crisis, and we have been in this situation for a long, long time. We had the choice, but to be here and to build power and to fight back. Our goals tonight are to build common understanding of what inclusionary zoning is and how to use it to achieve real affordable housing. We are here, and our goals are also to develop collective demands for the strongest possible inclusionary zoning policy and to get involved in building a movement to demand a bold inclusionary zoning. I'll go very quickly over to the agenda. And we have very exciting group of speakers here tonight. Jeremy Withers will be starting us off and going over of what inclusionary zoning. Jeremy is our researcher in inclusionary zoning and also a housing activist. Then we'll introduce Alejandra Ruiz Vargas from ACORN. She will go over to the history of the campaign. We have our people from Parkdale People's Economy who will go over some of the wins and successes over there in our neighborhood, Parkdale. We also have Social Planning Toronto that will go over how inclusionary zoning can win affordable housing across the city. We also have our councillor, Mike Layton, who will speak about the work we all have to have tonight and to push our councillors to support our demands. Then Progress Toronto will discuss how can we build power together. Following the presentations, we will have time for everyone here to ask questions, provide suggestions, bring their ideas, and figure out how we are going to win this fight. We'll wrap it up with a fun jump to the mayor and all of our city councilors before we move on to the next steps for winning affordable housing in this wonderful, beautiful city. So I will introduce our first speakers, and it's my pleasure to introduce Jeremy Withers. He is our researcher in inclusionary zoning and a housing activist. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Alejandro, and thank you for that powerful land acknowledgement. So my name is Jeremy Withers. I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Geography and Planning at the University of Toronto. And I also work with the Affordable Housing Challenge Project, which is a School of Cities initiative. And I've helped to organize the event tonight. So it's really exciting to see over 200 people here. So tonight I'm going to begin by talking about how disconnected the price of new housing has become from the needs of most residents. I'm then going to outline Toronto City Planning's current draft inclusionary zoning policy and argue it falls far short of the true potential of this policy to expand access to affordable housing. I'm going to conclude by arguing a bolder IZ policy with higher affordability requirements is entirely possible based on the experiences of other cities using IZ, but also on the findings of a number of feasibility studies conducted in Toronto. So next slide. When it comes to providing for the needs of low and middle income residents, the city's planning process is quite broken. Over the past decade, Toronto has approved record-breaking amounts of new high-rise housing, and the vast majority of these units are unaffordable to the vast majority of residents. Today, almost half of Toronto's households are renters, and they're on track to outnumber owners. But despite our city's declining home ownership rate, over the past decade, for every one purpose-built rental unit built, 9 condo units were built. And only 1 in 4 of those purpose-built rental units were priced affordably for the poorer half of renters. That's just over 4,000 affordable rental units completed for just over 250,000 lower income renter households. So if most housing units being built in Toronto are condos, who's actually able to afford them? A recent analysis prepared by the city found that to afford payments on an average newly built 1-bedroom condo, households would need to make over $106,000 per year. And to afford payments on an average newly built 2-bedroom condo, households would need to make over $160,000 per year. So what percent of Toronto's renters, that is households who don't already own homes, can afford these? And the answer should really sit with us. Today, over 90% of renter households in Toronto would find payments unaffordable for a new bachelor condo, or for that matter, a resale bachelor condo. And even if renter households tried to pay a highly unaffordable 45% of their income towards payments on that 1-bedroom condo, only 1 in 5 could do so. So if these new units aren't affordable to those who don't already own homes, who's buying them? The answer increasingly is investors. In fact, a recent CMHC analysis found that over the past 5 years, the majority of newly completed condo units in the GTA were immediately rented out as investment properties. These investment properties, when they're not left vacant or rented out on Airbnb, become the least stable and least affordable rental housing in the city. This is terribly unfair and frankly unsustainable way to develop a city. Most new housing is being developed solely for the profits of investment property speculators and of developers. The needs of most residents are entirely unserved by this system. The sad truth is that our city has long lacked the power to change this. Even when residents come out to consultations en masse to argue the city shouldn't approve a development unless it's more affordable, planners and councillors have little power to reject buildings on this basis. Should they do so, the decision would almost certainly be appealed by the developer to the Provincial Appeals Tribunal, the LPAT, which would almost certainly rule in the developer's favor. This is an age-old problem in Toronto. Many of us here have been part of campaigns that have experienced this dead-end situation. And that's why it's so exciting that Toronto is finally close to the finish line with inclusionary zoning. Once IZ is in place, our communities won't have to fight these fights one development at a time, but instead can come together and fight for higher requirements that will apply citywide. So almost 3 years ago to the day, after years of advocacy, the province finally permitted municipalities to implement IZ. And for about 2 years now, Toronto has been in the process of preparing and consulting on how to implement it. This June, councillors will debate and vote on the final IZ policy. Next slide. So Toronto is late to the game in implementing IZ. Hundreds of jurisdictions across the US, Europe, and Canada have used it for many years, and in some cases, many decades. Today, cities like New York require many developments set aside 25% and sometimes 30% of their floor area for affordable rental units. In Montreal, most new high-rises are required to set aside 40% of newly permitted floor area for affordable housing. In London, England, many proposals for high-rises are required to set aside up to 50% for affordable housing. That's why housing advocates across the city have been so frustrated to see how conservative the city's draft policy is. Next slide. So in September last year, Toronto City Planning published a draft IZ policy that would only require 5 to 10% of new condo developments with more than 100 to 140 units are set aside for affordable housing. And only 3 to 5% of new rental developments with more than 100 to 140 units are affordable. So it's important to understand that in this draft policy, IZ would only apply in certain areas which are within 800 meters of subways or GO train stations. About 2 years ago, as part of Bill 108, Doug Ford restricted the areas IZ could apply to these areas. Now, thankfully, these transit-oriented areas are currently where the majority of the city's housing development is taking place. But with this heavy-handed provincial interference in mind, it seems all the more important that the city implements an IZ policy that creates as much affordable housing as possible in these areas. So how much affordable housing is it possible to require? Next slide. To answer this question, the city commissioned a feasibility study, which was conducted in May 2019, updated May 2020, and will be updated again next month. It assesses in 11 different areas of the city what percentage of the floor area of a typical condo development and of a typical rental development could feasibly be required to be set aside for affordable rental units. In this study, affordable was defined as 80% of average market rent, which is about half the price of most newly built rental units today. In these studies, a set-aside rate, for example, 20% or 30% of a building, was seen as feasible if developers and landlords could still earn a level of profit that would motivate them to develop. Essentially, if developers are still able to make at least a 15% profit margin, and landowners are able to receive at least 10% above the current value of their land based on its use, then the development is deemed feasible. What these studies find is fascinating. The study shows that it would be feasible to require 2 to 4 times more affordable units than the current draft policy would require, depending on the area. Next slide. This means that right now, developers and landowners are making such large windfall returns. It's actually the previous slide that I think you want to be at. So right now, developers and landowners are making such large windfall returns that developments could be made to heavily discount many units and still make a 15% profit margin. For example, the study demonstrates that in every single area studied, typical condos could feasibly be required to set aside at least 10% floor area for affordable. In 3/4 of the area studied, typical condos could be required to set aside at least 20% for affordable rental units. So I'm sure we're all asking the same question now, which is what's the maximum percentage of affordable units the city could require in each area? And it's frustrating to find that the city study doesn't actually ask. That is, it only asks whether up to 20% is feasible. Fortunately, another IZ feasibility study was commissioned by the Maytree Foundation and authored by Steve Pomeroy in the summer of 2019. It uses the same methodology and very similar assumptions to the city study and finds that up to 39% of typical condo developments could feasibly be set aside as affordable in high price areas like downtown and young Eglinton. So 39% is a lot. Clearly, by neglecting to ask what's possible beyond 20%, the city study is unable to tell us anywhere near what the full potential of IZ is. And I think we can all hope that the update to the feasibility study coming out next month will ask that full amount. So far, we've only talked about IZ for condo developments, but the city's feasibility study also found that typical rental developments could support a lot more affordability than the current draft policy recommends. The draft policy would only require 3 to 5% of purpose-built rentals are affordable, but the city's own study shows that in 4 out of 11 of the areas, at least 10% affordability could be supported, and downtown and Toronto West, at least 20%. So that's at least 4 times higher than the draft policy is recommending. And this is particularly significant considering these are the areas where most new rental is being built, and applying IZ to them is currently the city's best shot to ensure rent controls are applied to at least some new rental units. So these studies demonstrate that a much bolder approach could be required of most new developments across the city without slowing down the supply of housing. And next slide. Next slide. There we go. Perfect. So that's why ACORN, Progress Toronto, Parkdale's People Economy, and a growing new number of housing advocates from across the city are now organizing this citywide campaign for a bolder approach. After a lot of discussion, these organizations are united in advocating for a policy that would require a minimum of 20 to 30% of new high-rise residential developments are set aside for rental housing, which is permanently affordable for a mix of low and lower middle income residents. Having looked at precedents from other major cities and the city's feasibility study, we know this demand, this ask is feasible. Especially, it'd be feasible to require of most condo developments and of a really large number of rental developments without slowing down housing production. So in conclusion, let's take a big picture perspective on the potential of IZ in Toronto. So next slide and last slide. Right now, there are a staggering 194,000 new housing units that have been proposed and are under review by the city's planning department. As we've seen, the majority of these are high-rise condos. Now, if 20% of those proposed units were required to be affordable rental, Toronto would create an additional 39,000 permanently affordable rental units in the coming years. This would effectively double the city's current commitment to support the creation of 40,000 affordable rental units by 2030. And importantly, these units created through IZ needn't cost the city a dime. With IZ, it's developers and the owners of the land they build on that ultimately pay, and the owners of the land that they bid to build on that ultimately pay for the affordable units by reducing their profit margins to more modest levels. So I'm really excited. There are hundreds of us here I really wish we were in a big community center right now where we could look around the hall and see how many people from all around this city, from all sorts of organizations and movements, are ready to fight for a truly dramatic change in how our neighborhoods are planned and developed, and to win this big change just in the next month or two. So thank you so much for being part of this. And I'm going to hand it over now to my friend Alejandra, who's a tireless organizer with ACORN.
Well, hi, everybody. It's such a pleasure to see so many people here. And I see people that are here, and you're going to see the faces like Cherry and Noel, Councilor Mike Layton, and Sean Mahar. So I love it because it's like good memories. So as well, the people from ACORN. So all the members from ACORN, hello, and everybody, hello. So I don't know, but what is ACORN? ACORN is an organization that fights for social change. We are low income and moderate income people. And this is very nice to know that we don't have to have a big education to make changes. Only you need to have passion, and only you need to have a common goal, and let's do it. So we have been working with affordable housing, childcare, internet for all, trying to reform EI, and now that is COVID, well, we need it really, very important. And and predatory lending. Thank you. So speaking of Cherry Novo, I love that she's here and she can hear a little bit of the history of inclusionary zoning. She passed the bill 5 times, and they didn't pay attention. So in 2006, she did it, but she was doing it before that anyway. Finally, in 2008, ACORN, in partnership with Wellesley Institute, put a report with Richard Darla, of course, in favor of inclusionary zoning, saying beautiful things about inclusionary zoning, that is doable, that is good for the city. But yeah, the city seems that they are deaf about it. Then we found between 2019 and 2014, the NDP, that in this case was Cherry, introduces the bill 5 times, and I like that. I think so they call it the instigator. Or I don't know, Cherry, am I saying something wrong? But I love this title because yes, you push these people, and this is why we are right now here fighting for better regulations and better bills for us. So then in 2014, Peter Milchen, that is a liberal, and why I say it's a liberal, well, this inclusionary zoning is really interesting. So a liberal took the idea, passed it as well, but no, didn't work neither. So next slide, please. Then this is how ACORN started really doing the campaign in 2015. We went to Ottawa and we visit the office of Bob Corelli. We had here, you see in French and in English. And then here, this was actually my first action in the whole history of ACORN, I mean, for me. And I went, and this was with Michael in Toronto, and was for IC, of course. So you can see that is people like you and me, isn't it? Like people that only had a goal and wanted affordable housing. So next slide, please. Then next we had here Sean Mahar, Councilor Mike Layton, and myself representing ACORN. And we did few of these, I don't remember, but maybe Sean or Councilor Mike knows how many we did, but probably 3 or 4 of these, no, probably 3. And same thing, we want to press the government. Cherry was there. Cherry Dino was sit down. I remember she wasn't there, but she would sit down there in the little chairs, you know what I'm talking about, in Queen's Park. And she was there like holding her breath that finally they're going to listen to us. And then finally in December 2016, the IC regulations passed it. But so given inclusionary zoning, the municipalities, the powers, this was awesome. We really cheered about it. Then next slide, please. Thank you. So then in December 2017, the regulations came from the province. They were really extremely pro-developer. Finally, Jack Mixon was elected, the housing minister, and he say literally this. He said these words, I remember so clear. He said, I don't want to give you all the power how you asking me. And this table was people like Sean Mahar, Acto, well, of course, ACORN, and people from, I forgot. It will come out to me. Anyway, we were there all, and he said, I don't want to give you this to the city, all the power to the city, because you guys had a lot of fight with the counselors. I know my coworkers, they were my coworkers for many years, and they are tough. They will not like inclusionary zoning. And yes, true enough, this has been the worst fight, with the city. So yeah. So then finally in 2018, you can see the action. You can see Sean is there. Well, ACORN, all the people from ACORN, people, Mike was there. Sorry, Councilor Mike Layton was there. Paula Fletcher was there. Peter Towns was there. Well, people from Bardell, I think so, was there. Many people. And we finally, in 2018, we did that action, and then we went to speak with Peter Milchen. And next slide, please. So finally we won IC, and we were so happy because they give us everything. I never been in a campaign that they give us everything we ask. So we say, okay, we won, everything is good. But then came .4. Oh, and this guy has given us a lot of trouble, isn't it? So he changed all, well, not all, but he changed a lot of the legislation of limit IC, inclusionary zoning, and again more picture of all that we have been doing with ACORN or Alice. Oh, there is Gorpers, Joe Crazy, yeah, Paula, and yeah. So can we move to the next, please? Thank you. So this is something when the history starts to become sad, very sad, because the city hires these people that are called Barry Lyon consultants, and they are totally pro developers. Why they didn't hire somebody from the community, or why they didn't hire the university? Why they had to hire these people that, of course, they're going to say no to inclusionary zoning, because the developers pay them for do consultations. Why are going to be against what for the people that pay me, isn't it? So the city choose them, and of course they come out and they say, well, we only seem feasible 5 to 10% as inclusionary zoning, and plus the developers needs to maintain a 15% profit margin. And I will say boo to that. Boo, you wanna boo there in your chair or wherever you are, so boo for that. And then the next slide, please. Thank you. And then ACORN released an inclusionary zoning best practices, and the best practices are very doable. And by the way, it was Sean Mahar who did it for us. And are like, this is not like create the boiling water, this is something that is already done in many cities, like Jeremy was saying. But unfortunately, the city again overlooked this report. Can we move, please, for the next slide? So again, the consultations came finally to here to the city in 2020. A lot of people were there. You Jeremy, were there. Mercedes, no, Teresa was there. I think so. People, Mercedes, I don't remember, but probably you were there. and the back, it was full. I remember this day was full of excitement. Many people of you were there, probably the ones that are the participants. And we were thinking, we finally got it, but no. They say we need to go consultations, then COVID came, and now we are here trying to do our best. So next slide, please. And now this is what we need. It's not what we want. This is not a tantrum. This is not that we decided that this is what we need. No, really, this is what we need. We need a minimum of 20 to 30% of set aside or units, and we need that every development, starting with 60 units, should be applied the inclusionary zoning. We need the set aside as a permanent. We know 130 or 99 years, because we don't want to give this to our grandchild, isn't it? And then deeply affordable, and we want that will be rental housing for people. So next, please. And then this is what ACORN wants to give you the message today. Really, most important is numbers. We can win this if we go all together, united, and we say this is what we need. We need to outpower the lobbyists of the developers, and say that if they see more numbers, we can win this. We had seen in other campaigns that we have won. And so we can win this all together and united. Next slide, please. How we can win this? Well, many ideas, but we need to pressure politicians. We know, and maybe people don't like it, but we had a counselor that has been saying all the time that we cannot do this. If we not do, because if we do 20 to 30%, the developers are going to move to another city. I don't know which city, if we are the golden eggs, the golden goose, sorry. So I don't know where they're going to move, but this is what they say. But we know that it's because many politicians or councillors has received money from their campaigns. This is something that we don't have to hide. It's a reality. But we need to pressure our politicians, as this is what we're going to do today at the end of this beautiful meeting. Next, please. And of course, election time is very important, but again, unity. If we decide as a common goal that we're going to vote for one councillor or specifically one party, we need to do it, okay? So we need to really set aside that. And then next slide, because I think so I'm taking too much time. Look at, get involved with organizations like us. We had a Etobicoke chapter, we had Weston, we had now downtown, George West, Scarborough, and East York. So please come. There are all the times and the days when you can come and participate. And of course, there are other organizations that you can do it as well. So next slide. And if you have doubts or concerns, please call to us, or you want to get united, please call us. We are acorncanada.org. You'll see the Toronto FO at acorncanada.org, 416-461-9233. And thank you for the commercial moment. And I think so, I'm done. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alejandra. And maybe I'll pick it right up from here.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining and for all of the amazing comments and discussion in the chat. There's so much that's actually going to be pulled from this in a later section today. So I'm going to go really quickly through a bit of an update coming from one neighborhood that's facing a wide array of developments happening, of course, which is Parkdale. And huge shout out to all the folks we're seeing already who are on the call here from Parkdale, who are involved in all of the different fights and struggles taking place and organizing in the neighborhood. My name is Mercedes Sharp-Zayas. I work as the planning coordinator with the Parkdale People's Economy. And as we've seen really across the city, Parkdale especially has been impacted by city planning policies and development that really prioritizes profits over people. And a big effort of our work is really trying to shift that dynamic to once again center people over profit. And so what it really means in practice is that we're seeing so many vital community assets, such as deeply affordable housing stocks like rooming houses, like core community services, such as the Parkdale Community Legal Clinic, and access to food as well, that are really being the first places that we're starting to see displaced and vacated as a result of this really profit-driven development we're seeing in the neighborhood. And ultimately, this comes back to a struggle over land and displacement tactics that really pull from, in many ways, the same practices of settler colonialism that have taken place for centuries across this land. But once again, also, we see the inclusionary zoning struggle that we're talking about today as taking place in tandem and in partnership with so many other forms of housing organizing that are taking place. So it's one of many different tactics and strategies that are necessary to really push for housing justice. So just wanted to shout out, of course, to all of the really vital work that's taking place in terms of encampment organizing, tenant organizing, and so on. We hear a lot in the chat happening around pushes for cooperative housing and community ownership of land. These are all different tactics that need to be taking place in tandem. Really quickly, I wanted to speak to the Parkdale Community Benefits Framework that was created in 2018. This was the first community benefits framework of its kind in North America, where it was creating a neighborhood-based set of standards, minimum standards that the community expected when it comes to new developments that are taking place across Parkdale. There are a number of different areas you can see here on the screen in terms of what we expect to see when new developments come into the neighborhood. But right now, for today, we're going to zone in right into affordable housing. So in 2018, we went through an 18-month community planning process and ultimately came up with a set of minimum standards that people expected to see, not only in terms of affordable housing, but also creating standards around housing accessibility, around the sustainability of homes, and so on. And so interestingly enough, it fits really in line with the calls that were coming from groups like ACORN and other organizing groups in terms of seeing at the very least a minimum of 20 to 30% affordable housing in new developments taking place, and also pushing for 100% social housing on public lands. So just really quickly, I wanted to talk about what this means and looks like in terms of the current development trends we're seeing at least taking place in Parkdale. Interestingly enough, since we've published the community benefits framework, we have seen at times developers or public institutions take up the community benefits framework and try to respond to it. So there is right now one development in Parkdale that has voluntarily set forward a 20% affordability standard that they're expecting in that development. Now, we don't know how long they're expecting that affordability to be, how deep that affordability will be, and who will be able to access those units. But once again, it at least is a statement that we can really hold that developer accountable to and continue to place pressure to make sure that that stands. That being said, of course, that's only one. The mass majority of developments that we're seeing happening in Parkdale are ultimately really foundationally based on this idea of displacement and really trying to push for more profits. So a couple examples of this, of course, are the fight that we're seeing in Parkdale around the Justice for Queens Hotel Coalition, who've been really pushing to actually see a higher percentage of homes saved based on the history of displacement that took place on that site. So there were 27 tenants who were unlawfully evicted, who ultimately several people unfortunately passed as a result of this violent displacement. And so really what the coalition has been trying to do is hold that developer accountable and ensure that they replace those units that were lost. That being said, what we're seeing right now is the developer, Bazaar in this case, is actually appealing the development process to go directly to the local planning appeal tribunal. So in other words, what they're doing is they're removing themselves from the public process where community members could actually push for things like affordable housing and putting it into a very technical, legal, and inaccessible space. And we're seeing that happen with other developments across the neighborhood as well. There's currently a big development by Kingset at Queen and Brock that did a large land assembly and is doing the very same tactic. So what this really means in many ways is that it kind of points to the need in many ways for a strong policy and especially a strong movement on the ground to push for a stronger policy that actually makes sure that we're not just doing site by site struggles at one at a time, that we're actually able to create a unified movement and push to ensure that this is actually something that's expected rather than something we have to fight for on a day-to-day basis. And another thing worth noting is right now, the way inclusionary zoning is currently being framed, Parkdale is not even considered one of the neighborhoods where inclusionary zoning would come into place. So all of these things, once again, bring in the need for us to continue to push for more. And so thanks again, and hopefully we'll get to chat about this more later. And for now, I'm going to pass it on to Saroja from Social Planning Toronto.
Thank you, Mercedes. Yeah, that was very inspiring, and it also makes me really think about how we need to engage in more cross-city dialogue, connecting all these movements together. So yeah, my name's Saroja. I'm a community planner with Social Planning Toronto. Social Planning Toronto has been advocating for a bolder IZ policy for more than 5 years. We've produced key research on IZ, and as a planner, I've been working really closely with grassroots groups in the inner suburbs, so outside of the downtown core, Jane Finch Housing Coalition, Thorncliffe and Flemington Park residents, folks from the Lion, Lawrence Heights Civic Action Committee, and Power and Community in Scarborough to really fight for housing justice. And so I know I'm really here to address some of the doubts that people have about inclusionary zoning, which are very, very valid. So I know there are a lot of questions around whether IZ can resolve our affordable housing crisis, and I think we're very aware that it is one promising tool that can help us to get more affordable housing built across the city overall. So it's not a perfect policy, but I wanted to highlight its potential and some of the victories that housing advocates and grassroots groups have gained so far through rallying, campaigns, actions, deputations, and research as well. So we were able to, collectively, we were able to extend the affordability period of the affordable housing units to 99 years in new developments. But there's still a chance to actually ask that these units be made permanently affordable, as some of the other speakers have highlighted. Now there is an income-based approach to the city's definition of affordable housing, which is still in the process of being worked out. But this means that that affordability is based on the percentage of one's total income spent on rent, rather than basing it on average market rates, which we know are just too high. And then we've also got to win by not requiring the city to provide incentives for developers of market rate housing, except for those that are proposing to build more affordable housing units than the required rates. So next slide. So we do have some promising figures. So between 2010 and 2019, 159,000 units of housing were completed in Toronto, and most of them in high-rise condos. If 20% had been required to be affordable, Toronto could have actually added 32,000 new affordable units over the past decade, which is a lot. And had it done so, the city would have succeeded in actually completing almost 8 times more than just over 4,000 units of affordable rental housing that it actually completed during that period. So there is clearly a huge potential for this policy to contribute to a broad transformation of how and for whom Toronto is developing for. So currently, inclusionary zoning will not be applied in what the city has defined as weak market areas. And many of these weak market areas are areas in the inner suburbs where a lot of low-income residents live, and they are going to experience rapid growth and development. And we're already seeing that in areas where there are new transit lines being developed. So it's really important that we plan ahead to protect the future of low-income communities. And applying continuous pressure on decision makers can really help us expand IZ to these communities in the near future. And thank you, Alejandra, for also raising that. Inclusionary zoning is something that could also have a positive impact on the future of low-income communities, especially Black, Indigenous, racialized, and 2 as LGBTQ plus and differently able residents. So as we know, the groups I outlined also experience disproportionately layered housing challenges in the city. So there are a number of people that are being affected by this crisis. During the pandemic, we've already been seeing skyrocketing rates, rental rates going up and condo prices going up in neighborhoods like Jane and Finch. And at the same time, low income residents are facing evictions at an alarming rate, and it only seems to be getting worse. There are very few options in affordable places for people to go to if they get displaced, and many of those being displaced will have a very hard time finding deeply affordable housing, and some of them might not actually fall. They might not be eligible for social housing or social assistance. So there's a huge portion of the population that, you know, are in this kind of limbo in between zone. And so rightfully so, a lot of residents are asking, you know, are these units going to be deeply affordable? And what do we mean by deeply affordable? We're talking deeply affordable housing as rent geared to income housing for those on the lowest end of the income spectrum, including those who are eligible for social housing and social assistance. So many advocates would say a common benchmark of deeply affordable housing is 30% or sometimes even lower of a person's income going towards rent. So I guess I'll reiterate again that it's important that we ask for a requirement that makes developers build a higher percentage of affordable housing in each condo and rental building, so that when IZ can be actually expanded to more neighborhoods, more low-income communities can actually benefit from it. And we're advocating, again, for 20 to 30% because studies show that this is possible in parts of the city without slowing the production of housing. So let's make sure the city doesn't lowball the potential of what IC can actually do. And at the moment, affordable units built through IZ will support a growing segment of Toronto residents who don't earn enough to afford market prices, but earn too much to be eligible for social housing. Some units will be deeply affordable and managed by nonprofit organizations, but there's actually still time to push the city to develop a higher percentage of deeply affordable housing units through these new developments. And we recognize that IZ is part of a wider shift towards social transformation, and it's a really big win if we get it right. This is why we need to build power right now through our collective organizing efforts and working in hand with coalitions, neighbors, and allies. Lastly, I just wanted to give a shout out to a lot of the neighborhood groups who have been doing the hard work of on the ground organizing, such as ACORN Toronto, Jane Finch Housing Coalition, Grower Grassways, Power and Community in Scarborough and Voices of Scarborough, People's Defense in Crescent Town, York Southwest Western Tenants Union, Parkdale People's Economy and Legal Clinic, Lion, Flemington Thorncliffe Park residents at 35 St. Denis who put on a rent strike. And there's so many more that I'm forgetting that I'm not mentioning who are fighting towards housing justice. And this is not an easy fight. So we're really grateful to be working with you. And it's super important that we unite our housing struggles and find common ground and build cross-city dialogue and connections, because as cheesy as it sounds, together we will be stronger in fighting this devastating housing crisis. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to pass it on to Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much, Mercedes. Oh, sorry, Saroha, sorry about that. Thank you so much. I'm not seeing my image come up, but that's okay. You probably don't want to see me. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm seeing thumbs up, so I'll just go ahead. Look, you're here tonight because you believe in change and you believe we can make it happen. Believe it or not, there's a generation of people in Toronto that think it's normal or okay that they spend $1,500 a month on a basement apartment, or more than half of their income on rent. That's why it's so great to see so many people here coming together to fight for this important policy change and ready to mobilize people to help realize that change. At its core, this fight is about taking power away from developers and putting it in the hands of people. There's a reason why the provincial OMB, now the LPAT, have the ultimate power. Developers like it that way. Inclusionary zoning is a tale of lost opportunity. You just heard in the last presentation how of the 150,000 units that were in the development pipeline in the past 10 years, we could have had almost 30,000 or over 30,000 affordable units built in that same amount of time. But the provincial government, and this wasn't because we weren't asking for that power. The provincial government voted against Sherry DeNovo's motion after motion to give municipalities that power. And then when finally they changed that rule, they put so many hoops for municipalities to jump through that they knew it was going to take them into the next election and beyond. And then Doug Ford gets elected and puts further hoops in constraints on municipal government's power to enact inclusionary zoning. Now we've almost gotten there, but if we're going to get it right, we're going to need your help. Decades of unbridled development with little housing to show for it is hurting our city. The profits have been flowing freely into the pockets of developers, and what little they have given back through community benefit, what little they have given back is only a fraction of what it could be with inclusionary zoning. We know that it's possible to require between 20 and 30% of new buildings to be in most of downtown sites to be affordable while still allowing developers to make a significant profit. You've got my support in calling for the highest possible targets, but we've got to convince 15 other city councilors the same. This legislation would be a huge win for people across the city, and it would allow us to move beyond fighting development after development after development, getting just a couple units in every development, and finally setting a standard and ensuring that there were more homes for people. We've come a long way, and a big thanks to ACORN, Progress Toronto, Parkdale People's Economy, Social Planning, and so many others on this call. And for Alejandra, I think it was 2 press conferences we did all together at Queen's Park, but we participated in many rallies together. So it may seem like a lot more. About a year ago, the city originally proposed that the affordable units created through inclusionary zoning would only be moderately affordable and would fall back to the market price after only a few decades. That was unacceptable. When the draft plan came up for consultation, hundreds of activists organized events, wrote to councillors, the mayor, and deputed at City Hall to call for more. And last fall, we won changes so that the units produced through inclusionary zoning will be permanently affordable and more deeply affordable. Now we're in the final stages of the fight, and we need to focus on calling for the percentage of units required in each of the buildings to be as high as possible. Now, inclusionary zoning isn't everything. It's not. It won't serve all of our housing needs and all depths of affordability. We can't and we shouldn't expect developers to pay for it all. I'm going to say that again, because it may be a surprise coming from me. We can't and we shouldn't expect developers to pay for it all. Governments should be paying their share and investing in housing. That is the role of government, to invest in communities, to invest in people, and to ensure that we're taking money from those who have it and distributing it amongst communities that don't and communities that do, distributing it amongst communities. Investing in social housing, investing in deeply affordable housing, investing in supportive housing. This should be the role of government, and we shouldn't be afraid to ask for all governments to provide more. But inclusionary zoning gives us an opportunity when developers are making big profits, when they're taking benefits from a city by upzoning their property, that the city of Toronto and the people of Toronto get something in return and see some of that profit through housing being built that people that live in the city and serve the city can afford. We're at a key moment with a final vote coming in June. And we know that the current draft policy could feasibly be changed to require 2 to 4 times more affordable units, depending on the area. Now it's time to reach out to councillors, to urge them to support and to reach out, to urge them to support an increase in the set aside of affordable housing, and to reach out to your neighbors and networks to get them more involved. Believe me, there is big power in numbers. When that phone starts to ring, when that inbox starts to fill up, when your constituents and your neighbors come out and depute at committee, we hear you. Just some councillors need to hear you a little bit louder. We've got a good fight ahead of us, but this I know we can win. Thank you very much for being here tonight, and I look forward to participating in the rest of the evening.
All right, thank you, Mike. I'm just going to continue with the presentation and go a little bit fast because I know we are a little bit behind schedule, and we want to hear from you guys and get to our activity. So my name is Saman and I'm from Progress Toronto, and I'm going to talk about how we can build power to push for bold inclusionary zoning. Next slide. Just for those who are not familiar, Progress Toronto is a nonprofit located in the city, and we advocate and organize for a more democratic and socially just and progressive city. And next slide. And so I really want to talk about our theory of change very quickly. I don't know if anyone here has access to millions of dollars to hire lobbyists to win IZ for us. Okay, no one's raising their hands. Do you guys do your parents sit on the board of the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, or is any kind of big media conglomerate that can help shape a narrative for us? Okay, seems like that's true. My parents don't do that. They don't sit on those boards. And so if we're thinking about what we can change and where our power comes from, what we like to think about Progress Toronto, it doesn't come from the money we have or the connections we have or the kind of backroom deals that we can make. It comes from being able to connect with one another. Who has friends, who has family, who has colleagues, neighbors, right? We all have those things, those people. We have access to people. And if enough of us organize, we can, just like Alejandra said earlier, we can win. So our work really pivots on four pillars of how we understand power. One is building power. The second is pushing power. Third is checking power. And the fourth is taking power. So Councillor Mike Layton kind of got into this earlier, but we need to be pushing politicians and elected officials and making sure that they know that this is an issue they need to vote correctly and on. And if they don't, we need to think they have to feel like their power is being threatened, that we're going to organize against them in the next election. And how do we do this, right? Well, we really want to be building power, and that's what we're all here for, right? We're all here. How can we get more involved in the inclusionary zoning campaign so we can grow and we can scale up, and each and every one of us can bring in 10, 15, 20 people into the campaign to push our elected officials, to push Don Tory, push your city councillor to concede to our demands for more affordable housing and to implement a strong inclusionary zoning policy. Next slide. I'm going to go quickly through our vacant homes tax campaign, which is similar to inclusionary zoning in the sense that probably most of you whenever you hear inclusionary zoning, maybe the first time you heard it, I know I was like, what does that mean? But so it's sort of like a policy wonky thing that could really impact our lives. And the same thing that was our vacant homes tax. So I'm going to outline what we did to win our vacant homes campaign, and hopefully we can build on that and multiply it by hopefully 3 or 4, since there's so many of us here tonight, and we can build the power to win. So in January 2020, we launched a campaign for our vacant homes tax, and it really wasn't, a lot of people weren't that interested. A lot of, like, the mayor hadn't come out in support of it. No, a lot of, obviously, Mike was in support of it, but there weren't a lot of people who were keen on adding a tax to people who were essentially just speculating on the Toronto market. But we helped 8,200 people send their messages. We held 18 phone banks throughout the year, helping people connect with their city councilors, leave voicemails for their city councilors, calling on them to implement a vacant homes tax. And we also helped, we phone banked over 1,600 hours of, we had 1,600 hours of phone banking, and we had 30 plus volunteers who phone bank with us. And we also had 13 people who spoke at committee in favor of the vacant homes tax, sharing their experiences of the lack of affordability in the city. And in December 2020, we won the vacant homes tax. And I'm telling you the story because if we can win these smaller fights that we've already talked about, there's no reason why we can't push Tory and City Council to win the next, a strong inclusionary zoning. Next slide. So how do we win on inclusionary zoning? Lobbyists are working overtime to water down the IZ policy. They want to protect their profits. They're not in the development game to build affordable housing for the people of Toronto. They're in the development game to build their profits and to maximize their profits. So we need to organize and grow to make sure that our city is being built for us. So how do we do that? We email councillors, city planning staff, and the mayor and tell them why a bolder IZ policy is not only possible, but it's needed. We all live in the city, and it's too expensive. No, who can afford to live here? And the second thing I want you all to consider doing is speaking at committee. So planning housing is going, the planning housing committee is going to be meeting in June, and we are going to get gear up so as many of us as possible can sign up and share why we want, why we need an inclusionary zoning policy. We want you to organize and join events in your own community. We know, especially from what Mercedes has shared about Parkdale's people economy, organizing hyper locally is so important and so powerful. And we can really push, we can build grassroots power like that and connect, link up our shared organizing across the city to demand more. So, and I also want to acknowledge that there are going to be phone banks and workshops and other actions organized by ACORN, us at Progress Toronto, and People's Parkdale Economy and Social Planning Toronto to campaign for a strong IZ policy. So next slide. So what does that look like in the next few months? And I really want to just plan this out, right? What we're gearing up for is really the July 14th council meeting. That's when the IZ policy is probably going to get voted on. So we have right now we're on April 28th, and we have until July 14th to win on the inclusion zoning that we need for our city, making sure that developers are not watering it down. So there are a bunch of dates on here, but I just want to go through them quickly. That next week we are going to be starting at Progress Toronto a phone banks for inclusionary zoning, where I think that Andrew's going to be linking that in the chat. We also have if you have never spoken at a government committee, that's okay. We have a great team, great facilitators who will teach you how to speak at a government committee. ACORN is hosting their phone jam on May 13th, and Andrew's going to be linking that as well. On May 19th, you're going to learn how to meet with your elected official. That training is being led by Kumsa Baker from TCBN, who I think is on this call, as well as Stephanie Nikitsis, who is the Chief of Staff for Councillor Mike Layton. So that's going to be a really great workshop that I'm going to encourage you all to join. SBT has a power and organizing event in Scarborough, so keep your eye out for that. And what I really want you to focus on is, and earlier in May, what we're doing is building up our capacity. And then May to June to July, what we're doing is really mobilizing like our friends, our family, and using the new skills that we've learned, like meeting with our counselors and speaking at committee, to do that work. So maybe May and June you organize to meet with your city councilor, and then on June 11th or the 28th, we don't know what day the inclusionary zoning item will be on the committee's agenda, you'll sign up to speak at the housing committee. So take a look at this campaign timeline, think about how it's going to fit in with your life and how you're going to make sure that you show up and we can win on July 14th. Next slide. So I just want to ask, I know that there's a bunch of questions in the chat, and I have been following along, but there have been just one or two questions that I thought would be good for us to get answered, and these are more technical questions. And maybe, Jeremy, you can answer this one. There's one question that came up a couple of times of why or if inclusionary zoning can be retroactively applied to already built condos and developments.
That's a different policy. Vacant home tax is a policy that will, like, I don't know, like, no, that's it.
It's just a different thing that can happen. Okay.
Yeah, we can acquire units, but for nonprofits, there are programs to do that. But for inclusionary zoning, it's a different policy.
Great. Okay, thank you. And I think there are a couple of questions about what is considered to be affordable housing, but Gulsvert, I think you posted the link for that of what the bands are, which was great. And I think now we're going to move on into our activity. So right now what we're all here to do is, it's a town hall. So we're here to brainstorm and find out ways that we can best work with each other so we can build a strong citywide movement for inclusionary zoning. So when July 14th comes, we win. Correct? Okay. And so we want to hear from you. There are 4, this is a brainstorming session, so please just paste in the chat. And what we have right now, what we're thinking about is, what are some recommendations? Oh yeah, so first we want to talk about how we can win, of course. And so that might come with a few questions, right? We need to make sure that and some of those questions we might not have answers to, but if you do post your questions and we capture them, we're going to be creating a frequently asked questions sheet and email it out to the group so so everyone will have access to it when you're organizing your own communities. And we also want to hear about recommendations. I know that there are tons of groups out there who are doing the grassroots organizing to be able to push inclusionary zoning locally. And what have you learned? And please identify yourself so then we can link if you are a part of one of those groups, we would love to know. So other people in the chat can maybe link up with you and your group. And we also want to hear what are some opportunities you've identified and what are some challenges that you've identified. So some opportunities is that perhaps this is a really key moment in like Toronto to be pushing for inclusionary zoning, because everyone's realizing with the pandemic how our city is not built for us, and how people are being pushed out of their homes. And then for challenges, maybe we're thinking about developers and lobbyists. So please, please share. All right, so Wendy has a question. I'm wondering what percentage is set aside for accessible housing. I think that all new developments need to be have to follow accessibility rules. Is that correct? Yeah, I'm not. Well, that's a question that hopefully we will be able to answer that. Do we have any sense of how city councilors might vote if it happened today? That's a great question. I would guess with this current makeup, and maybe we could have asked Mike, but I would guess with this current makeup of city council, perhaps we need to do a lot more organizing and push the city councilors that might not be keen. So another question is what I've learned from why is the city's proposed policy not going with their own studies numbers? A challenge is inclusionary zoning only applies to neighborhoods near major transit areas as per the provincial law. Why were there not tests for max? Sorry, I couldn't, this sentence was making sense to me. So what do we do about the province? That's one thing, I guess someone's asking essentially, if we pass a strong inclusionary zoning policy at the city, will the province be impacted? Maybe that's a challenge. The province is a challenge. An opportunity is communities across the city are all in agreement that we need a strong IZ policy. That's true. I would say an opportunity is also that most people can agree that Toronto's too expensive and that the city is being built for developers. As a recommendation or even opportunity, develop a report card for councillors and even MPPs on their stance and voting records on affordable housing and IZ, and use that as influence as a mechanism with voters. Yeah, so maybe develop a report card so we can track what people are doing. So what if the requirement starts at 60 units plus, does it prevent people from accessing low rise buildings and seems to encourage higher rise concepts?
I can comment to that?
Yeah, for sure. Yes, do you want to mention something? Yes, please do.
Yeah, about the 60, the city wants to 100, if I'm not mistaken, to apply to 100, but we say why 100 when we are missing a lot of opportunities. So we want, when we say we want, I think so everybody here wants 60. This is why, no, it's because, what was the question now? It's specifically because we actually lower the asking, because they only wanted to do it for buildings that are 100 units and up, meaning apply the inclusionary zoning, all these buildings. But we say that it's unfair, it should be to 60 units and up.
Great, thank you. Why, so one other question is why 15% profit margins? How did we arrive at that number? Why not 10 or less? I just want to open it also up to anyone who wants to raise their hand and voice a comment or question via verbally. Want to give people that option, please raise your hand. Nitin, I'm just going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hi there. I'm sorry I'm joining you guys late. I think it's very good. I just had a quick question. So there used to be a zoning where you actually had to have a percentage before some time ago, a policy where whenever development was going to be happening, they would have to have a zoning for affordable housing. Is that still in place within Metro Toronto?
I don't think that there's a policy like that right now. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Sorry, I just needed a request to get unmuted. There's never been a policy since I've been around for most of the development in the city. There has been a policy on the books for some time for very, very large sites, but they consider large sites in the context of a vertical area, of a horizontal area, not a vertical. So it's like none of the towers, and I represent probably one of the most development rich communities in the city of Toronto, and meaning some of the most largest development, and we're not able to apply the existing policy in any way. And I don't think there's ever been another policy that would have allowed us to capture affordable housing in the development of the scale we currently have. To answer another question that was earlier that Salmon tried to answer, I would guess we probably have 6 or 7 votes on council now to expand the minimum set aside number to sort of the 15, 20, 25% range, which means we'd have to convert at minimum 6, probably more like 7. And I could probably tell you who the easiest ones were, but that's probably the number we'd have to get to.
Thanks, Mike, for that. That was great. So we have to convert 6 or 7, and that means that we need to be really building, because that's a lot of people. So Alejandro, I'm going to ask you to get on mute, off mute.
Yeah, hi everyone. I want to say a comment. I want to share a little bit my experience living in this area of the city in the East Downtown. I live in this neighborhood called St. Jamestown. And I can share with you how does it feel to be pushed around by luxury real estate developers. We are being harassed. It feels like that. There's condos and luxury towers just popping up everywhere. The rent and the affordability of rent is just not possible for people to live here as a low income family or a low income individual. Everything has gone very expensive, and forget about social housing. There's no and a lot of supporting housing, and the increased presence of developers has come with the increased presence of policing in our communities. And the people who have been more affected by that are marginalized communities, right? Immigrants, people of color, indigenous people, and LGBTQ families. So it feels terrible how for the last few years, I have seen this sense of community and the sense of solidarity we used to have here has beginning to be threatened. And I believe like a lot of people in my community, we all agree how bad that has affected our lives, right? And we are trying to fight back. But I think the presence and the power of those luxury real estate developers is way too much. And it's difficult to put up a fight with them. I just wanted to share that because it really feels terrible. And it feels like we are being abused by those property and condo developers here. We need to definitely fight back. And we are trying to organize here in our community, but it's very hard. Yeah, I just want to share that with you.
Thank you so much, Alejandro, for sharing that. I'm sorry you have to experience that. And something that I hear from you that's an opportunity is how do we connect with, because all these issues are so intimately connected, like affordable housing, defunding the police, how do we connect with other people in the movement for a better, fairer, and more affordable city? And that includes like the fight to defund the police. So maybe that's an opportunity. And thank you so much for sharing that. It was really powerful. Does anyone else want to come off mute to be able to share their thoughts? Okay, well, I'll go back to the chat. It seems pretty busy. Oh, Mercedes.
Maybe as a quick time check, we have about 5 minutes left. Maybe just to voice to people, you probably can see a bunch of us typing out all these comments, and we're also going to incorporate all of the feedback we're getting in the chat and bring it into a graphic that hopefully we can share with everyone after the call. So if you're not seeing your comments up there yet, we'll be able to add those in retroactively. So don't worry.
Yes, thank you so much, Mercedes. Well, if that's the case, then there's 5 minutes left, and maybe perhaps we'll go to the last activity, or yeah, and then we can do that. Maybe, yeah, is that good? Sorry, I know that there's we'll ask Maria Cruz to say one more thing, just because Nitin, you had already spoken out once, but Maria, you haven't had a chance to voice your thoughts, so I'm just going to ask you to quickly to unmute and share your thoughts.
Hi. Yeah, what Alejandro said about all the luxury towers and stuff going up, to me, like, I don't understand why such an excess is allowed to even happen, especially when so many people need adequate housing and don't have it. So I'm wondering if there's anything we can do about that. I mean, it sounds like a big job, I know, but is there any way we can get the city to disallow so much of this luxury towers and stuff that's going up, and to put in place more, more reasonable structures and more, more for durability, for access, for accessibility for everybody, including people with disabilities. That's what we really need, not these stupid luxury towers and shit. Sorry for cussing, but that's nuts. Okay, I don't know why the government's even allow this to go on. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Maria. I think that what we're doing right now with inclusionary zoning is a part of that. Of course, it's not, like we have mentioned before, it's not a solution, but it's just one step we can take to make sure that more developments that are coming into our neighborhoods are going to be affordable and accessible for all of us. It seems like there are tons more people who have more questions. Well, at least two. Pam, do you want to ask your question? If it's okay, I know we're over time, but it seems like there's some momentum. So if everyone's okay with that, yeah. just to take 2 more questions. So Pam.
Yes, please. Yeah.
We can hear you. So
Oh, okay, great. Sorry. It said it wouldn't let me unmute. Yeah, one of the things that maybe should be looked at as well is co-op housing here in Toronto. We have quite a few federal co-ops that are refinancing their mortgages, and this takes them out of their obligations to be or to provide affordable housing, which they've done for sometimes up 40 years. And so now they just become small businesses with no obligation to provide affordable housing. However, the city does have land leases with them, sometimes with more than 50 years remaining on the land lease. And this would be an opportunity for the city to insist on affordable housing provisions as part of their agreement to re-sign these land leases. However, they haven't really been doing that. They have just been saying that these co-ops have to provide housing at average market rent, which we know, of course, is way too high. This also loses the RGI subsidies. These co-ops no longer have to provide RGI subsidies. So this is something I think that the city should be looking into, and also other organizations, because this is going to be the province already has determined that 6,000 affordable housing units have been lost by refinancing, by expiring operating agreements, and they're estimating by 2025 the loss of 125,000 units, and this can be avoided. So that's what I would like to sort of bring to everyone's attention.
great, thank you so much, Pam. All right, so I noticed that we're going over time, and we have an action we want you guys to all to do right now. And if people are still keen on and speaking afterwards, we can do that for people who want to stay. But we want you to call your city councilor right now. And if you want to find your city councilor, his phone number, it's right here. I'm just posting it in the chat. And please leave a voicemail for your city councilor and let them know that you want them to fight for a strong inclusionary zoning policy, and tell them our demands. I think Alejandro, you were going to do a quick demonstration, or do people feel comfortable doing it themselves?
I'm ready, but if people feel comfortable, I can do a call right now while people are calling, if you want.
Yeah, how about you just do a quick, please do a demonstration. I think it would help a lot.
Okay, I'm going to call my counselor, who is Paula Fletcher here in East York. And so I'll going to try to do my best.
Can you put it on speaker?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Hello, this is City Councilor Paula Fletcher. To help reduce the spread of COVID-19, my staff are working remotely. All calls and emails will be responded to promptly, and I assure you that every resident of Ward 14 will continue to receive strong service from my office. Please leave your message after the beep, and my team will get back to you. You can also reach me by email at councilor_Fletcher@toronto.ca. You can also reach 311 by phone or email 311@toronto.ca. Please continue to monitor toronto.ca COVID-19 for up-to-date information, resources, and facts about the virus. Thank you so much for calling and stay well. Record your message at the tone. When you are finished, hang up or press pound for more options.
Hi, Paula. How are you? I'm hoping you're doing well. So we are here and with exactly 133 people that all we're advocating for inclusionary zoning. This is Alejandra from ACORN. So we call in because, well, as you know, I am your constituent, and I know how to explain you the housing crisis that we had because I know you care, but we need that you care so much to the point that you vote a minimum of 20 to 30% in all new residential developments with 60 or more units set aside for the permanently affordable rental housing in the next vote in the council vote. And then we need as well the affordable units kept for forever, not only for just 25 years. And as well, we want that inclusionary zoning will be applied to all Toronto because we don't want to have people left behind. Thank you so much, and hopefully we see you soon. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Amazing. You did such a great job. Thank you, Alejandra, for doing giving us a demonstration. So everyone, please call your city councilor right now and let them know.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, type it on the chat.
I don't know. I would like to make the last comment. It is okay. Well, of course you can. Anyway, thank you. I heard somebody who say, well, in the chat that we should follow Ana Bailao, and I totally agree with him because Councilor Ana Bailao is the one who say that it's only 5 to 10%, and this is what she believes, and this is what she tried to tell all the councilors. So if you guys are from his word, please call her and try to tell your family and people and friends like Saman was saying and Mercedes and everybody here, because I think so we need to convince her. If we convince her, I think so it will be easier as well. Well, this is my belief. Thank you.
I think some people are still. Great. I think almost everyone's done. Someone left a message for Denzel Min and Wong, which is great. Wonderful work, everyone. Hopefully that's not the last phone call you will make. It's great phone calling and phone banking and calling your constituents. Your city councilors are such a great way of applying pressure to our city councilors. And I want to recognize that we're out of time now. And I want to thank everyone for joining us here. We at the peak, we had nearly 250 people join us, and that just shows how much this issue resonates with people. We need affordable housing in this city. It's not nice to have, just like Alejandra said in her presentation. It's a need. People are being forced out of this city, and we're being displaced, and we needed to fight back to make sure that the city is being built for all of us. I know you were hit with a lot of information tonight, everything from how inclusionary zoning works, to the history of inclusionary zoning, to any hard questions that you might have to answer if your friends and family ask about them, and also different actions you can take. We're going to be sending out a document with all that information, so don't worry if you couldn't copy and paste it or grab it from the chat. We will send it to you, and I hope that you all sign up for the number of different events that we have going on. I'm going to plug in the fact that we have our phone banks next week are starting for inclusionary zoning. So if you liked giving a call to your city councilor, you can join the phone bank next week on the 6th, and you can help other people call their city councilors. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you. It was amazing.
Thanks so much for coming, everyone. Looking forward to seeing you in the coming months.